Hey, welcome back, everybody. We've got another quiet summer day here in our part of Texas. South winds, and we've kind of broken that stranglehold with outflow boundaries kicking southward and piling up in this part of the country. And now we're just seeing that south flow coming out of the Gulf, keeping things pretty breezy at night. Pretty gentle and persistent southerly flow. And let me see if I can bring that up on the charts here. I'm getting back up to speed even on the charts. Some of you may know I was away the past couple of days due to my grandmother's passing, but I do appreciate the comments. But everything went pretty well down there, and I'm basically getting back in the saddle here and getting caught up with the business, and I have not caught up on the emails, so you may have to give me another day if you've sent some material. All right, so take a look at the weather. We've got hundreds in Oklahoma and Kansas. You can see them just off the top of the chart there. We got 102 at Alva and Bartlesville. But down to the south, we've got, you can see that southerly component in this part of Texas, and temperatures are coming up to the mid-90s in some areas, but otherwise it is fairly mild for this time of year. Up north, we have the usual MCSs and migratory frontal systems moving through that area. So here's the leading edge of something coming out of North Dakota and Montana. Tropics are pretty quiet, not much going on there. Eastern Pacific, that's pretty active. I'm not going to go into too much detail on those since those aren't going to be affecting us. If any of those do recurve towards Baja California or something like that, we'll probably bring them into the fold. But even 5 days out in the Atlantic, you can see just pretty much nothing. I guess we're not looking at any strong waves coming off the African coast. Okay, we'll jump right ahead into the surface map. Figure this is one way we can mix things up. And this is very much the first time I've looked at the weather since being on this trip. So we're going to be looking at things from scratch, which is kind of the way we do things. Suim checking in with us here, and Burl H. and Lloyd McCarter got good heat index. Ryan Toomey's heavy weather delays impacting airport operations in South Florida. Good day from Mick and Justin Pulliam saying hello, ADW. Also, Justin Pulliam saying the outflow boundary storms went crazy around Houston, was fun to watch. And Ryan says pretty quiet in the tropics with a few waves meandering through the Caribbean. And I got the webcam hooked up, so see if I can move some of my windows out of the way. So yeah, we're going to get this thing up and running. Every time I plug in the webcam, I have to reset all these parameters for some reason, so that means I have to mess around with the chroma key and get that working, and I was rushing to do that at the last second when we were about to start here. So yeah, this webcam, let me see if I can, or this chroma key, let me show you this real quick. Yeah, see, I've got these settings down here, and then I'll go to properties or filters, and then there's this chroma key thing here, and I've got to play around with these. You can see we've got a green backdrop here, so it's kind of a challenge getting the maps to fade in just correctly, but I think that's pretty close. No, still a little washed out. I'll keep working with that. So anyway, heading into the map. Wow, look at that Hudson Bay vortex. It is definitely active for this time of year. We've got that 534 decameter thickness line right in the center of the Hudson Bay area. So that means a lot of cold weather for that part of Canada, and that also means stronger than normal flow from the northwest. So that's keeping the frontal systems active in the Great Lakes and the northern plains. And so the northeast U.S. is going to be getting a taste of that. When we have these kinds of patterns active, the northeast usually gets the tail end of those systems as they come through. And not too much for Texas in the south, usually, unless things get extra strong up there. And looks like we also have a system moving into the Pacific Northwest right there. You can see the very strong thickness gradient between Seattle and the Snake River in Idaho. And wow, look at that monsoon, pretty active all the way from Mexico up to the Four Corners and into the northern Rockies there. And a better way we can look at that is on satellite. Okay, we'll be looking at that a little bit later. Yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit about European weather, so that'll give us something different to look at. It's good for keeping our skills sharpened, especially when we're in this kind of quiet weather season. It's not very quiet in the Four Corners, obviously. If you're driving west on I-40, you start hitting storms there around Albuquerque, Klein's Corners, all the way through Gallup, rain all the way through Winslow. And normally this is a very dry area, but not this time of year, especially in August and early September. And you got showers all the way to Lake Mead and Vegas. And looks like today not really any storms in the Phoenix area. Looks like they're just north of there. But Tucson definitely getting some of that action. Looks like some of those storms are down in the valleys. Yeah, so that's the Tucson area right there. I think I might pull up the radar and we'll see what some of these monsoon storms look like. I'm still old enough to remember the days when we were having to rely on the FAA radars out here to get any imagery. It's basically once you went west of Midland, you were dependent on FAA radars all the way out here. For some reason, the Weather Service was not paying for radar installations. Maybe it was a western region thing, I don't know, but we had one mountain, or one radar up on Mount Charleston. There was another one at Battle Mountain, and we would have to dial those in manually over a regular telephone line. It was very primitive. But nowadays we just pull up GR level 3 and we've got quite a few to choose from, so I'm going to select the Tucson radar. That'll be coming up shortly. Another way we can look at the monsoon action is with water vapor imagery. So you can definitely see that plume all the way up into South Dakota, and looks like some of that may be feeding the activity up in North Dakota also. But you can see that that's rooted all the way down into Mexico. So some of that Gulf moisture, maybe some moisture from the Gulf of California also, basically coming together, and it's been gradually drawn northward by the very intense heating in the desert Southwest. So these moist parcels gradually find their way inland, and they are feeding that monsoon. Okay, so there's our radar there at Tucson. Let me bring up all the counties and roads and all that. Okay, so that radar there is situated a little bit south of Tucson. Normally the storms that we have out here, they're normally not severe, but they can be very potent wind producers because you get a lot of inverted V profiles. You end up with a lot of outflow that's cooler than the 100-degree air around it. So that means you have a lot of very dense currents working their way to the ground at very high velocity. So that means a lot of outflow. Okay, so what we got here, somewhere up here I think is the Mount Lemmon area. Tucson itself somewhere in here. So I think these storms are just west of the mountains, and you can see a little bit of that outflow right there. Let me see if I can bring up the roads here. Yeah, there's the base roads. Okay, yeah, this is actually right over the East Tucson area. It's where my old house used to be there, around 22nd and Kolb. And quite a few other showers in behind it. And let's see what we got for tops. It's a pretty good cell there. And 19.4, not much showing. Yeah, these are going to be topping out at about 38,000 feet. So it does look like this is the dominant storm. You can see these high velocities, or these high reflectivities up at 10,000 feet, showing 63 dBz, 67. So there's going to be a little bit of small hail mixed in there. So they're getting hit pretty good there in East Tucson. All right, elsewhere, let's look at some of the upper air charts. 500 millibar anomaly. You can see that blue color showing much below normal heights, so very strong Hudson Bay vortex there, and you can see it just kind of winding around over the past several days. So you basically see these little waves rotating around, kind of like spokes on a bicycle. And what we've got today is that right there. So pretty much a semi-permanent vortex right there, and then these waves probably working their way around cyclonically like that. And we got a couple waves off the west coast here. Those will probably be working their way inland. We got a little bit of a ridge across Montana up to Alberta, and then you can see the upper level high over the south central U.S. There's a look at it on the 250 millibar chart. You can see that high pretty much centered right over the St. Louis area, the Boot Heel of Missouri, covering much of the central U.S., and that puts the south under this easterly flow aloft. So that means there can be storms moving westward. Kind of unusual, but we do get that during the summer months. Then at 200 millibars, looks like the vortex is centered over maybe the Springfield area, maybe just south of Kansas City. Looks like Georgia getting some of that 50-knot flow aloft, so that's helping to support some stronger cells. If we, assuming we do have any convection in that area, those stronger winds aloft would be supporting those. Not so much in Texas, though. Okay, then where's our moisture? Well, a lot of it is inland. Evapotranspiration being a big factor, but the flow off the Gulf, the deep moisture, looks like that's starting to work into Texas. Mostly just being shut off by the very strong ridging aloft. Okay, there's the potential temperature map, and, well, it shows a little bit of that cold front from Montana down to southeastern Oregon, looking like that. Possibly another front in through here. But when we analyze this, we have to kind of be careful about outflow boundaries from thunderstorms, because that can distort the field, like what you see happening right here in Yellowstone. So this is basically showing us potential temperature. The red lines, that's basically temperature normalized to 1,000 millibars, which is about 300 feet MSL. So that kind of removes the effects of elevation to a certain extent. So you can see if everything was near sea level, 50 degrees Celsius, that's about 120 Fahrenheit. So there's definitely some significant warm air in here. It's just being offset by the very high elevations in that region. There's the storms up there in North Dakota. Pretty good line of them, and you see the tail end Charlie right there, just north of Sturgis. And then we have a few other cells out in western Iowa. Pretty good anvil on that cell right there. Then in Texas, not too much going on. I think the sea breeze may have worked inland. Got one tower right there near Crockett. Other than that, things pretty quiet. There's not much going on. Looks like a little bit of haze mixed in here. You can really see that with these cloud shadows there. It looks like those shadows falling on some sort of smoke layer or haze. Okay, let's just go ahead and move on ahead, and we'll take a look at the soundings. Fort Worth, This is showing the warmer air aloft, kind of keeping things kind of capped. So if we have like maybe 86, we'll take a mixed layer of maybe 68 degree dew points. Yeah, it looks like just a tiny bit of capping in here, kind of centered in this layer right here around 850. So looks like the main problem is not capping at 700 millibars, but it's capping at 850. Just kind of a very warm, low level layer. So I guess the heating we're getting during the day just not enough to really overcome that. And then we have also a lot of dry air aloft. So some of that's probably getting entrained and working its way down to the ground also. Let's see here. Moving forward, we'll just take a quick look at conditions over the next 48 hours. What we see here is low pressures inland, so this is pretty much intense heating in the high plains. Then we also see the Bermuda High off the coast of Florida here. So in between, that's what gives us our southerly flow this time of year. And I see what probably looks like a boundary through here. There's definitely some thickness gradients through the Great Lakes. So I'm thinking probably a warm front perhaps, something like that. And then we pick up the other cold front in the northwest like that. So overnight, looks like an MCS moving through Illinois, kind of weakening towards dawn. Another MCS in North Dakota. Pretty quiet tomorrow. Storms redeveloping in Minnesota, down into Nebraska and South Dakota. And the flow looks a little bit more downslope in Texas. See, we've got kind of what looks like a southwesterly gradient, sort of. So things may warm up a little bit here in Texas as we get into the weekend. Then towards the end here on Sunday, looks like we could have some sort of boundary from east to west along the Ohio River region into Kansas right there. Okay, I wanted to mention European weather briefly. And before I get too much further into that, let me take a look at the chat here. I've been seeing what some of the streamers on Twitch have been doing. They've take the head and shoulders shot and they shrink it down in the corner, like down in here. I'm thinking about doing something like that. I'll have to play around with the settings in here. Jumping Flash is here, and Justin Pulliam thinks the stream is laggy. Ryan says it looks okay to him, so it's probably a client-side issue. Ryan saying heavy moisture staying put over the South Florida area from the Gulf. Heavy storms starting overnight where he is in Florida. Temperatures cooler. Sue M looking for storms tomorrow morning. David Moore didn't get the YouTube notification. I have no idea what the deal is with the notifications. YouTube, I guess they're just not 100% reliable there. All right. Yeah, let's take a look at that European weather and check that out. Let me scroll back over here. Okay, so you can see things look much different there in Europe. We've got this big vortex over Ireland. Very similar pattern on the 500 millibar chart. Big vortex parked right around Cork and Shannon out on the west coast. So this is essentially a occlusion. Looks like we have maybe two jets. One is over the English Channel area like this, maybe feeding up this way. Then we have kind of a southerly jet. That might be more subtropical. But this whole band here is basically showing a large baroclinic area. So where would we place the fronts? Well, they're very challenging even in that part of Europe, but I think looking at this, looks to me like we have one wave over Spain right here. And you can see we've got kind of like a ridge kind of extending into France like this. So yeah, maybe a little southerly system, kind of like that. Then as far as in England, I'm not too sure. I think there's probably kind of a washed up system way up here that's moving northeast, and this is all occluded stuff, so probably very showery out here, very cold air aloft, warm air at the ground, and that usually means a lot of shower activity during the daytime. So most of the frontal activity looks like it's down to the south, and then we'll just take a quick look over the next week. You can see that occlusion spinning around 546 decameter, and when we see 546, that's getting pretty close to snow conditions here in the US when we see it that low. So a very cold air mass right there over Ireland. And then advancing this forward, that occlusion just kind of starts dissipating over England. Some ridging building into France right there. And then the next system, looks like that's over Italy, maybe here. Maybe some frontogenesis coming together. And then we see that kind of lifting northeastward into Poland. Then pretty quiet, we see some ridging building in. Looks like some cyclogenesis maybe there in Italy around midweek. And then looks like a new system coming into Ireland and Scotland late next week. So it's a much different pattern from what we usually see. The leading edge of this next front, it's going to be looking something like this. So there's the cold front, bit of a warm front right there. So it's a little bit different from what we usually see here. Usually the systems in the central U.S., they're very well delineated. They're almost textbook. But in Europe, they're much harder to find. So there's the frontal system right there, the wave basically right at that location there. And then 24 hours pass, and you see the cold front moving into France and the Netherlands like that. Lots of cold air advection in England right there. So a return to showery conditions for the weekend. Not this weekend, but the next one. And there goes the old frontal wave on its way towards Russia. Then you can see a new one coming in back behind that. Okay, so returning to U.S. weather. You've got much different patterns here, so let's take a look. Now, usually there's a lot of emphasis on low pressure, and I think high pressure can be even more important. For instance, the Bermuda High, obviously, that's a huge influence on weather in the southeast U.S., but also these migratory highs. There's a high right here. You can see this 1014 line. So that's outlining a high pressure area. Then we have another one building in from the Pacific way out here. So this whole area here, this is all high pressure. So that's essentially what's driving the patterns across the U.S. So this little high here, that's going to be supporting a front to the south. It's going to be located something like that. Looks like maybe a warm front over Ontario and Michigan, and then this other active front over Illinois. So this is what we have going on right now, and that's the reason we have storms in the Iowa area. That's a frontal storm. And looks like that probably connects back up to this other system in Montana. And there you go, that's the frontal analysis picture. So over the next few days, let's see, we're getting into the weekend. We see this next system coming together in South Dakota. So warm front lifting northward, cold front coming in behind that. And then over the weekend, we just see that gradually working its way eastward. By Saturday evening, that's going to be moving through Wisconsin into Michigan, so probably a lot of rain in the Great Lakes area, the western Great Lakes area. So you can see this cold front starting to come south into Canada and Missouri. On the other side, Bermuda high feeding moisture northward. So where we have that air impinging on the front, Missouri, that's going to be probably the best shot for showers and thunderstorms. So I'd be paying close attention to that over the weekend. Tail end of the front moves into the Kansas, Oklahoma area later in the weekend. Just kind of stalls out right there. And looks like we have another high building in, kind of reinforcing things. So that's going to keep that high pushing, that front pushing southward gradually down to the I-40 corridor. And then we see it make it almost all the way to the Red River. And then it looks like we get the southerly flow coming back up, and that should start lifting it northward. I don't think we have enough of a push with this high here to get a backdoor front into East Texas, but depending on how shallow these systems are, these models do get it wrong occasionally. So we'll see what happens next week. In fact, it's got that boundary kind of quasi-stationary there in Arkansas and Oklahoma, so that could be a signal that maybe that boundary could push even a little bit further southward, especially if we have reinforcement by convection along that boundary. More cyclogenesis in the central U.S. during the midweek period. That should give us another push of a frontal boundary to the central plains. The synoptic scale picture just kind of shows persistent front in the central plains right there, so it looks like some good precip chances coming up, and maybe that upper high will start backing off a little bit, because where you have a funnel system, that's going to support a jet stream. So we're up at 324 hours. This is quite a ways off. So let's see what it looks like in that time frame. Yeah, you see the change here that we get later on. Yeah, right through here we see northwesterly flow increasing quite a bit, and we see that upper high backing off into New Mexico. The high does try to build back in later, however. But right now, what we have is the main jet stream well up to the north. We have 105 knot winds up over the Great Lakes. The upper high, as we've said, over Missouri. And then what we're going to see over the next week is just the high pretty much remaining in place, but then starting to back off a little bit. You can see we break through a little bit of this westerly flow later in the weekend as that frontal system works southward. And then we pull in this northerly flow here in the Texas area. So this probably could support the backdoor front making it into Texas. But we do really need some reinforcement along that boundary to help kick that southward. And then late in the period, looks like that high starts building in across Mississippi and up into the northeast Oklahoma area. Okay, so that's about all I've got here. Not much weather going on right now, but maybe in a few days we'll have some stuff to look at. We'll look out in the Atlantic real quick and see what we got going on. You can see the easterly waves moving through the flow. Here's one easterly wave. That's a trough. Easterly wave ridge like that. Another trough, and so on. And you can see those migrate westward. And there's the Bermuda high right there. It's technically just southeast of Bermuda. Bermuda itself under this westerly flow. But do we see any vortexes, any hurricanes? Well, we have one good easterly wave coming through around Tuesday, coming into the Antilles Islands, Windward Islands. I forgot the name of that, but there goes that wave. Looks like that doesn't develop. Yeah, GFS not really going for any tropical system from what I can tell here. So it looks pretty quiet even out in the Atlantic region. Okay, a little discussion there about the notifications. The viewer count has quadrupled. Yeah, good question. I may have to set up one of my devices here to get notifications so I can kind of see what's going on there. David Moore asking about the new digital atmosphere. No, all the stuff with my family, that's kind of that, and keeping up on the orders, that's kind of slowed me down quite a bit here, but hopefully I'll get that going over the weekend. I've actually got a developer I work with in the Ukraine. He's helping out with some of the project. I've had him working on stuff over the past several years, so it is underway, and I'm going to try to push out this release as quickly as I can, but what we're working on mostly is the radar module right now. We're trying to get full support of the dual pole stuff, and the encoding of the radar products is a little bit different. So once I get that out of the way, we should have a release here maybe in the next week or week and a half, hopefully. Okay, so I think that's about all I got from here. We'll take a quick look outside. Gotta go to Internet Explorer for that. Yeah, pretty quiet outside. Very pretty. Little cumulus coming through. That's probably the sea breeze making its way northward. And that's probably about all I got here. So anyway, we're back. I think we'll be on schedule for the rest of the week, and appreciate you watching, and hopefully we will see you tomorrow. Give me a second to get the music queued up. I forgot to do that. Things are always in a big rush here. Let me get that going. And there we go. Anyway, thanks a lot, and we'll see you tomorrow.